Hi YouTube, it's time to do a ignition coil and spark plug change on my BMW X3. It's a E83 model N52 B25 engine. It's a 2.5 liter petrol X-drive engine. So today I'm going to change all the 6 ignition coils and the spark plug as well, and I've got all of the parts that are required. So original OEM Bosch ignition coils and the spark plugs. So I've made sure that the parts are exactly the ones that are in here. In fact, this one is exactly the same one, same part number, and that's the same one that I have procured as well. So I'm going to be changing them today. All I've done so far is taken out the cover, the engine cover, just held by 4 screws, 4 nuts at the top. So, you just take them off and you remove and you get access to the engine, wall cover, etc. So, yeah, pretty much you need 6 ignition coils, 6 spark plugs, and from a tools point of view, nothing special. All you need is 16 deep socket with a catching thing for spark plugs. Just make sure they are thin walled deep sockets, and an extension less than 12 inch or whatever. That should be good enough. Just make sure it is not too tall or too short. It just has to stick out enough, because there's no problem with changing it in these 3 cylinders. But when it comes to the cylinders at the back, you just need to make sure that your extension is not too long and it should be able to go in, as well as it sticks out just enough so that you can put the torque wrench up on the top. So that's all that is required. So to make all of that happen, so I've got a extension. There is a socket, spark plug socket, 16 attached to it, and a flexible attachment, and of course the torque wrench. I think the specification on this one is 23 Newton meter plus or minus 0.3 meters. So torque wrench and a spark plug socket. That's all that is required from a tools point of view. I'm gonna go about and doing it. Let me pause. So how do we go about doing it? Very simple. So let's get the ignition coil. So you just pull on this. This is how it would be, and because I've opened it a couple of times, it is really coming out very easily. So when you pull the tab up like so, it pushes this thing out. You take it out, put it on the side, and then gently pull on this like so, and you get the ignition coil out. Once you do that, just go in there and inspect the spark plug well. Check if there is any oil or anything dirty. If it is, then you gotta make sure that there is no leak in the gasket, etc., and maybe do a gasket replacement as well. But this has already had wall cover as well as spark plug gasket replacement, along with this gasket as well, and the Voltronic motor gasket as well right here. So all of those gaskets have been replaced, I think a year or two back. Now ideally we could have changed the spark plug and the ignition coil at the same time, but anyways things were anyways good, so I did not have to do. But now I basically found that one of the coils in cylinder 1 had become weak, so it was throwing some misfire errors. I swapped the coils, drove around, the misfire moved to cylinder 2. So that's how I got to know that it's time for me to change the ignition coil. So that's why I got all 6 of them, ignition coils and the cylinder. That's what I'm trying to do. So once you have taken out the ignition coil, all you need to do is put in your deep socket. Make sure it sits perfectly centered. and use your wrench and unscrew it. Just make sure there's one particular thing that you need to take care of, is this is perfectly vertical. When you're putting pressure on this particular lever, make sure it is perfectly vertical and it is not bent around like this, because what I've heard is that the spark plug, the ceramic part of it, might crack. So you don't want that to happen. So just make sure that you're not pulling on any end, or it is not going in a non-vertical fashion when you are trying to unscrew this. That's pretty much what I'm going to do now, and do it for all of the cylinders.